Hi, this is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, energy worker, and channel. This lecture on Ceres is recorded for EA Zoom meetings here on Facebook and also on YouTube. And this lecture on Ceres, myth, archetype, and astrology. I know that when you come to an astrology class or sign on for an astrology lecture, you're accustomed to doing astrology, and I will include stuff on Ceres here about half the time, but I have to tell you the myth and archetype story. In the way that I do astrology, understanding how humans are actually wired and how the psyche is set up and how our spiritual unfolding occurs, that's incredibly important. So I always start with myth and archetype and then get into astrology. It helps you, in my, not just my opinion, but in my experience, understand a human and how he or she is wired much better than just memorizing lists of what Ceres in the first or Ceres in Aquarius means. So anyway, I'm going to take you through myth, archetype, and astrology. Let me pull up the presentation. All right, so we will do this. Okay, great. So there we are, myth, archetype, and astrology. Let's just jump in here. Why Ceres Now? Tom, you're an evolutionary astrologer. Why are you all up in Ceres's business right now? And what I want to start off with is, in 2006, most astrologers, we were distracted by the International Astronomical Union demoting Pluto from the status of planet to dwarf planet. It made the news. Everybody made such a huge deal about it. But here's the deal. Discussions on Pluto's status continues. In fact, see September 2018 headlines where people were reporting, wait a minute, there's still convo in the astronomical community about the status of Pluto, maybe redefining some terms and qualifications for, you know, what lets a body get into which category. So anyway, in my opinion, well, Ceres was promoted, this is a fact, not my opinion, from asteroid to dwarf planet at the same time. And in my opinion, I see this is the bigger story. At that time, well, empowerment comes through self-knowledge and self-acceptance, and self-care and self-love are central to it. And Ceres is about nurturing and self-care and love, where love comes from. So I see that promotion of Ceres as more important. Now, as of this recording, it's, you know, almost 13 years ago. I think it was in May or July or June of 2006 when that big meeting happened. And so when it was promoted, it needs to be talked about more. So I've been teaching about this, but now I want to put more intention, I guess I made a mistake here in the presentation, on the importance of the archetype. So consider the prevalence of eating disorders or issues, even emotional eating, even if we don't consider it a disorder, preventable illness, as in care of self, not being prevented, people wondering if they're safe, because Ceres has to do with safety and protection, and also people running around with unprocessed mommy and daddy issues, and how they may be spectacularly ruining your love life. So the little punchline here got ruined because I made a mistake in the presentation. So as we advance here, you're gonna see this, yeah, played out because I ordered it. Oh, and then so ruining your love life, ha ha ha, okay. Now, I believe, like, why now? It's 13 years later. Why now, Tom Jacobs, evolutionary astrologer? I think it's because because of the Ceres related healing potentials may also help us with Pluto and Saturn and Capricorn, which is, as of this recording at the end of February, starting to heat up. Depending on the orb you use, you know, I was counting 5 degrees of orb, and that starts in March, and then off and on, of course, goes till November 2020, when those two planets are within 5 degrees of each other. But the thing is that histories of protection or not being safe, right? Safety, not being safe, parenting, nurturing, and where we learned about love are bound to be stirred up with Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn. If you haven't seen it, I have I don't know if it's an hour long or something, a video on YouTube from a few weeks ago, sometime in February or January, where I recreated a subscriber class for my subscribers, because it had Q&A on it and their voices and names. I kept the presentation and redid it outside a subscriber class for everybody. And so that's on YouTube. You can watch that for free. And it's just an empowering view of that conjunction. But anyway, I think that, you know, in Capricorn, no less, with Pluto, we might feel, you know, up against what makes us feel disempowered. And then Saturn comes to join and says, what are you going to do about that? That does have everything to do with how we are authority figures for ourselves now, what we consider maturity is, and that can go back to this parenting archetype of Ceres. So, okay, great. Now, Cerialia, which you're going to see in the banner throughout this presentation, this is a festival of Ceres. I'm subtitling it, of course, Finding Ceres Within. And this is a home study course from April 20th through 26th. You can read about it at tjacobs.com and sign up there. But I'm going to do a run through here just so you can understand what it is. Again, it's a home study course. It's using channel material and meditations and an optional astrology MP3 reading. Basically, if you sign up by April 1st, you can opt for it at an additional fee, this mini reading on Ceres in your chart. So this presentation here on Myth, Archetype, and Astrology is the kind of prerequisite. So I wanted to teach all this because the course itself over that week is based in channel material and doesn't include astrology. So I'm kind of coming at it from both angles. Channel material on self-care, etc. Ascended Master Jehudi, also known as Hermes Thoth, Saint Germain Merlin, I'm channeling these material from him, and it's about self-care and uncovering patterns of how we nurture and what we've learned about love from our families in the past, and how we've potentially recreating those patterns about love and care in healthy or unhealthy ways, but to understand so that we can become more empowered. And the idea is to move out of old patterns to increase self-care, because in the model of soul that I teach, your soul intends that you learn to become the source of love for yourself. The soul is already loving. Soul is not wounded. Soul can't be hurt. It can't be offended or wounded. I know that some EA people teach that, but from my channeling and working with the spirits of dead people, and you know, it doesn't look like that from my perspective. The soul is goddess God energy, is source energy, all loving. Watching you play out human drama in 3D, wondering what will it take for you to go from fear into love. So Ceres as a mothering parenting archetype is critical to this love learning process, because love was modeled for you by your parents and family when you were young. We get into archetype, I'll explain more about this. And even as you have matured, those original imprints quite likely remain. All right, now let's get into the mythology of Ceres. She is the harvest goddess, or the you know, crop goddess, right? The grain goddess of grain, who feeds us. This is a holdover from the Great Mother archetype. And if you've studied goddesses in mythology, you know that there's a point, you know, when we go further back in time through different cultures where names can transfer, you know, be changed, and attributions of qualities and character and behaviors and stories to these goddesses, you know, the original mother goddess is the one who feeds us. And so Ceres, for me, is a very prominent mythological archetype here, very, very prominent, the one who feeds us. Think about the earth itself, you know, giving us food. You know, that's a very important thing for the history of beings right on the planet. Now, she is the most important deity to the Roman populace because she makes civilization possible. Specifically, cultivating grain enables surviving together. Therefore, she's a model of a figure who provides. This is really important here. So in the stories, right, she's the mother to Proserpine. If you've heard me talk about Ceres before, you've heard me talk about Persephone, right? Ceres and Proserpine are the Roman names. And Demeter, I always say Demeter, forgive me. I think Demeter is probably correct. The mother of Persephone. So I say the Roman mother, the Greek daughter. But anyway, Ceres is Roman, Demeter is Greek. So she's a mother archetype specifically to a particular, you know, being, a particular figure in mythology. And she is defined by her role as a mother. This is really important. Now, Ceres believes she must protect the girl because she's immature. Nurture, guide, protect, you know, everything you think a good parent would do. The definition of a protective mother, right, in this mythology. So then we have Proserpine's abduction by Pluto, or Persephone's abduction by Hades, depending on who's, whatever, I'm mixing up names, I do it all the time. Again, forgive me. And the idea is that she's young, and Hades or Pluto spies her and says, "Whoa, I'm in love." So this whole scheme is cooked up. Persephone's father, Zeus, Jupiter, is Hades, Pluto's brother. So he's like, "Look, I know her mom's never going to go for it, but I gotta be with your kid. I love her." And so this whole abduction happens, and then Ceres freaks out. Her daughter is kidnapped, right, by the Lord of the Underworld, the dude nobody wants to hang out with. So she appeals to other deities for justice, and she wants, this to be undone. But her demands are only partially met, and she's only partially satisfied. So for 2/3 of the year, she's up on the surface with her mother. This is the decision. And for 1/3 of the year, she's down below with her husband because she's married Pluto/Hades. And the earth becomes cold, and every year for 1/3 of the year, Ceres mourns the absence of her daughter. So crops can't grow. This is the explanation for winter. Now that we have that story, she protects the daughter. She freaks out if the daughter comes to harm, or if the daughter makes her own choices even. Because I do believe Persephone chooses to marry him. I don't think that he's all bad. I think he falls in love with her. He just happens to carry the energy of the underworld, so we want to vilify him. People do take advantage of young girls. That's true. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. In the archetype, actually, in this mythological archetype, I think that Persephone is trying to grow up but feels smothered by the mother sometimes. Elsewhere, I have teachings on Persephone, and MP3 on my site on the Astrology page, and also an article on my articles page for a chapter from Living Myth, Exploring Archetypal Journeys on Persephone. So yeah, so let's move on here. Now that you have this story, I want to talk about myth versus archetype and then go in the archetype. Myth is always social instruction. The stories that we receive, the group must teach its members how to succeed and be successful members of that group. Of course it does. It wants to survive. And stories are told to extol certain mores or emphasize certain virtues, and also warn about or shame other virtues or non-virtues, right? An archetype is how we're wired as conscious beings. What needs and desires, what urges unfold within us over time naturally. And since I first got business cards for this work in 2004, I've had on the back of them, sorry, whoops, I'm ahead of the time. But archetypes are natural expressions of our psyches, which involves divine consciousnesses too. So this is the natural thing unfolding. Sorry, it's on this, forget it. Always look for the differences between myth and archetype. One way you can do this is take a myth that you seem to identify with or seem to be living, and look at what you are finding you need to explore through it. And then look at what the story actually happens, what actually happens as we're told. Beyond the story, rethink how it feels and how it works. What are you actually experiencing? What are you learning? Because you're not actually choosing to shame yourself for making a choice outside the socially accepted norm. I do this with Chiron and Lilith and a bunch of other things. I have 2 volumes of essays on this, Living Myth. You can check out those 2 volumes where I've done it with maybe 20 archetypes or so. So ultimately, this is about honoring who you are and how you're wired, refusing to be boxed in or shamed or limited or pigeonholed. And this is where the little note is. So when I got my first business cards, on the back, and they're still there, this phrase is still there, the way you're wired is no accident. Nothing wrong with you. You're learning, you're exploring archetypes as you go. All right, so now let's talk about Ceres and archetype. When we're very young, it's about models of nurturing. We receive care. We feel safe or we don't. We're nurtured or we're not. We see when we're young how others love us and each other. So we learn about love, right? We see who gets love, when, and why, and what a person has to do to get love or to be loved or to be safe, etc. So you can substitute for love, support, nurturing, care, protection, helping, healing, a shoulder to cry on. Who gets a shoulder to cry on, when, and why? What do you have to do to get a shoulder to cry on? Validation, encouragement, mentoring, etc. All those things kind of fit with this learning about love. We adapt to conditional love if it exists in our families. It's kind of a weird thing to think about until we need healing on it, right? But it happens a lot. And we want to help and heal others too, but we may be unable to do so. So this all happens when we're extremely young. We see all these things and we find we want to love. Okay. And models of love may also include ideas about what can't be healed or helped, whether people believe they should refuse to help others or they're just unable to. But that's part of this love. Is it conditional? Is it unconditional? What does it mean? Now, we do for others as adults, repeating, building on, or negating those models, but and including helping, healing, feeding, picking up after, making decisions for others, right? But we need to do for others. This is the core of the Ceres archetype. Doing for and caring reflects love. With Ceres, love is not a notion or an idea. This is really important to understand as we progress into the astrology bit of it. We may define ourselves by that doing for others and caring. And when love calls for action, habits form. You know, we see others benefiting from our love as action, and that can feed us because we can feel satisfaction that we are giving the love that we may actually need. I'll get into this soon too. So we can begin to identify as what we're doing. I'm the person who feeds. I'm the person who listens, right? I'm the person who picks up after or cares for, whatever, because we love protecting and nurturing. This is the core of the Ceres parenting, mothering archetype. Now, sometimes we're not sure how to let the other person grow up or progress into his or her own path. And that's part of the Ceres archetype. She can't let her daughter grow up, and she freaks out when the daughter, you know, grows up very suddenly. It is not the ideal scenario, but eventually it has to happen. We all have to grow up. We love so much we may try to prevent others from making their own mistakes. And if you identify as a protector of somebody else, think about how hard that is to let that, you know, to let that happen. So we put the care of others above our own because we need them to be safe, because we derive a sense of safety if they're safe. This is Ceres. And so our needs can become blind spots as we care for others. And so we may work hard to help and heal and nurture and all that and mentor others while putting our own needs off. So Ceres people then may ignore their own needs, right? You may feel you have to give, but you may define yourself by that giving and then not realize what you need because you're trying to be there for somebody else. So this can make people overwork to bring love through action or love as action to others because the Ceres person needs to feel a space inside them filled up. Like if I'm giving to you, then I feel the love that I need to feel. Okay. This is the empty nest thing. Some people adapt. Kids grow up, they go away. You know? Other people have a wistful sorrow and sadness and depressiveness or whatever. If we identify as what we do for others, even children, they're going to grow up eventually. Others are going to, you know, part of the Ceres thing is like taking someone under your wing, even if not a biological child, right? Fostering adoption counts. Like a 14-year-old comes into your life and you raise that person for a few years, you know, it's a Ceres thing. It's a parenting, mothering, parenting Ceres thing. But also somebody you take under your wing for a short period of time. That's why mentoring fits in here. When I say mentoring, you have an idea of boundaries, right? But when I say parenting, sometimes, you know, it's a little more murky because of all the depth of the Ceres material here. Okay, some Ceres people mature or grow into overdoing and to compensate for an inner emptiness. It's kind of what I'm talking about, this space they may want filled up. And that can be sourced in the models of love they learned when young and the payoffs they do and don't get now. Like, what are you getting out of over giving to people who can't see your needs? What are you getting out of that? Maybe you're not done feeling, maybe some people need to heal resentment because they give too much and other people don't give to them, or sadness, or it's unfair, or, you know, maybe anger or something. You know, maybe we need to experience that, so that's what comes up. And, you know, but what are you getting from not letting someone else make his or her own decisions? You know, okay. Now, then we move into Ceres in the birth chart. This is where, of course, we want to focus. But I wanted you to understand that whole process, because it's critical. As you know, when you look at a birth chart, you can't tell how someone lives out an energy. So it's good to understand the various ways that it can happen. So how, why, and when do you care for others before yourself? Or what kind of blind spot do you have about health or nurturing or standing up for yourself? Think about that protective parent archetype where the child feels safe. Well, that's part of the Ceres story. How might you define yourself by what you do for others? In my experience, that's a huge part of it for people. How do you prevent yourself and others from seeing your own vulnerability? What I mean is that you might give to others because you want to feel that loving energy, but you might feel overly vulnerable if somebody sees you as having a need. And again, that can go back to models of love from when you were very young. What does it mean to be vulnerable? That's part of the Ceres thing too. When her kid is taken away, she's angry. Of course, I try to teach that all anger comes from pain, but we don't know that in the moment. Okay, now, if Ceres is retrograde in the chart, just want to include a couple notes. The chart holder will not know at first what to do with this energy. That's how I talk about all Ceres and all retrograde energies. When to help? When should I nurture? When should I protect others? Like, what's worth doing here? How can I meet my own needs? Like, what needs matter? When should I give, or when should I have boundaries? Like, when should I not give? When should I, because I love somebody, engage in tough love and not do the thing the person seems to want or says he or she needs? So the need here is to invent his or her own wheel. Notice I didn't say reinvent the wheel, because you have to come up with your own way of doing it. If you copy other people's models, you'll be unhappy and unsuccessful. You have to invent your own recipe. So available models that the person has been shown simply will not work. What does nurturing look like? Whose needs matter? All these things. Person needs to come up with a reason. But most people with retrograde planets, the vast majority, some of them are kind of frozen or in stasis, like deferring making a choice, like sitting there waiting, hoping there's clarity eventually, or hoping things change enough and the decision in front of them can just go away. I know with my own Chiron retrograde, I felt that for a long time, like, how compassionate should I be? Like, how can I afford, you know? I even have memories of being a teenager and being around people who were like having an emotional moment. And I was like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do here? You know, because I have to figure it out. But anyway, if people with retrograde planets copy what looks normal, that's what they'll tend to do. It's not going to work. So you have to come up with your own thing. Given available models, take a little bit here, a little bit from there, piece it together. Okay, now Ceres in a house. The area of life in which this nurturer archetype will play out. Giving love through doing, like loving through doing, I guess is a better way to say it. But also where you may expect love through doing from others. And for many people, it's both, because we have to get down to that place in us where we really evaluate these models of love that we were shown. So people may have a very strong Ceres energy and nurturing care for others and be that protector, that, you know, that mentor, you know, that person may strive to have boundaries, et cetera, but that person might also, you know, be waiting for someone else to do the same thing for him or her. Okay. Providing, feeding, offering a compassionate shoulder, all those things. This in the house where it'll play out. Now, the house represents the areas of life the person may do for others in order to distract from doing for the self, or distract from the feeling of not being loved enough or protected or safe or nurtured by others. And the areas of life in which the person will identify as what he or she does for others. That identity is really important with Ceres stuff. Where boundaries need to be developed, like, when should I not help you? When should I, out of respect for your difficult journey to become the source of love for yourself, when should I not help you? And then which identities need to be grown out of. Like, I really like doing this for you. And then the other person says, but I'm an adult and I want you to stop doing it. And the first person says, but I love doing it for you. You know what? Yeah, okay. So what identities do we need to grow out of? All right, now Ceres in the first house. Anything in the first house, you'll wear it as your role. Like, you will inadvertently show up as that energy, giving off that energy. So this person would identify as a nurturer. This person may typify Ceres' blind spot regarding self-care. This person may routinely take others under their wing and need to learn to let others go. And this person may attract others who need help, healing, nurturing, protection, mentoring. And this person needs to evaluate when to toss the little birds out of the nest, when to have that tough love thing going on. You think about the energy of the first house, there is that, you know, when someone does it well, that person is naturally confident, any planet in the first house. And others may say, oh, looks like he knows what he's doing. Let's put him in charge. Finally, someone to take a leadership role, right? So finally, someone to take charge. So that's why Ceres in the first person, who's giving off the energy of Ceres, may attract others who are looking for it. And it can be, first house planets are kind of an unconscious thing where we don't always realize we're doing it until others say, oh, you're kind of like that, aren't you? Because we're just showed up and naturally kind of probably, what do you call it? Not haphazardly, but like not paying attention. We just put on the costume that felt right. We just absentmindedly got dressed or whatever, and it's like a Ceres outfit. So we don't realize we're doing it sometimes until others say, oh, look, you're really good at that, or look, that's who you are. So that's a Ceres in the first house. Anything in the first house, of course, is very important, whether it's conjunct the ascendant or not. Okay. Now, Ceres in the second house. Oh, by the way, you know what? I have a note on this later, but houses are not the same as signs. When you find astrologers teaching that way, they're trying to condense it to make it a digestible teaching, but they're not the same. Houses are the parts of life where action takes place. Signs are how and why things happen. I'll go into this later, but I just want to be clear. Don't in your head right now say, oh yeah, Ceres and Aries are the first. Don't do that. I know Jeff Green did that. I know that his students and graduates do that. I strongly recommend you don't, because like when my chart comes up, I have a, Libra rising. So when you see Mars and Libra in the first house, people get confused because they've heard over and over again that Aries is the same as the first house, or that it's been implied. It's not the same. It's the first house done in a Libran way. So anyway, don't equate that in your mind as I go here. Just don't. Okay, second house, nurturing and protecting others is deep within the person's value system. And many tools and resources will be developed so the person is a helper, healer, or parental figure. Planets in the second house can be extremely resourceful. This is the house where we notice what we need to do or create in order to survive. So we line up our tools and then we attempt to intentionally use our resources, time, energy, attention, money, tools, skills. We try to use our tools to survive and make things work and flow smoothly. So nurturing is central to the person's value system. Like, how am I going to make life happen? Oh, well, in the toolbox are Ceres tools. Now, time and energy resources are spent and may be focused on becoming a better person for others. And this can be the foundation for self-esteem. So in a very important way, all Ceres stories can come back to, identifying as the person who, does for others. But this person will, frankly, likely calculatedly figure out how to use time, energy, money, attention to be a helper or a healer or a protector or a mentor. So and that use of time, energy, money can contribute to self-esteem. Okay. The goal in the second house is liking yourself. It's not only survival, that's part of it, but also to get to the place where you like who you are. You respect yourself because of how you use your resources and what tools, which are resources that you've gained, what skills you have gathered to you. Now, this person needs to learn the value of self-care through focus on what the self needs, seeing others as works in progress who need to grow up too. Because I think one of the hard things with Ceres in the second, or one of the, not hard things, but one of the ways we can easily go wrong with that placement, become unhealthy with it, is marshaling all of our expertise and our tools and our values and our money to focus on caring for others, not realizing we need to start with ourselves. And it's always true with all kinds of healing energy, healing, helping, nurturing energy in a bunch of different archetypes. You know, whatever, Moon, Venus, Chiron, Neptune, whatever. In a bunch of different archetypes, we need to take care of ourselves first so that we can be effective when we choose to be there for others. But we're not here to be martyrs and leak all of our energy because the world's full of suffering. It's just a teaching here from all these nurturing archetypes or healer archetypes. Okay, okay, good. Ceres in the third house. This person will have an abiding interest in Ceres themes. Curious, right? Learning, right? Much thought and discussion will center on Ceres and on these things when Ceres is in the third house. It's a house of mind and learning and communication and kind of the lens through which a person looks out at the immediate world. That person will see health issues or people who aren't parented or unprocessed mommy and daddy garbage. You know, that person will see how others need nurturing or healing everywhere in the environment. And again, the mind will be sparked, like the curiosity, the words, the learning, the teaching, the speaking. Now, this person may be always learning new approaches to these Ceres behaviors. And when active, this person may be not afraid to verbally stand up for the underdog. Think of that protection idea, mentoring and protection. Ceres is not the soft mother archetype of the moon. You know, when the daughter is abducted, you know, Ceres doesn't say, "Oh, woe is me." She doesn't do that. She goes, "Oh, I am angry." She becomes that fierce, you know, I always have the joke in my head of like a rising up on two legs, like a four-legged animal, like, oh, this is serious. I'm going to take, you know, she gets into battle mode. So the protection idea, right? So when Ceres is in the third and active, it might not be afraid to verbally stand up for the underdog or somebody who's not being cared for. Now, this person may be relied upon by others to be a voice of parental authority, whether the chart holder likes it or not. This person may need verbal validation of worth regarding identity as a helper parent. In other words, communication as part of the nurturing process. It's not just doing something, but in the third house, it's doing and describing it or saying, I would like to do this for you. And there's a communication aspect that's part of the feeling of the I feel satisfied in doing the nurturing. I need to tell you this thing. I'm kind of smiling because my girlfriend and I have conversations about this stuff all the time, and she has her Ceres in the third house, and I just really appreciate that about her today as I finish up this presentation. So Ceres in the fourth house. In the family system, there will always be a Ceres figure, even from a young age. Anything in the fourth house. This is just a general tip and trick I like to share as an astrology teacher. Anything in the fourth house, it's about your inner world and your foundation and what happens in your feeling realm and how you need to deal with your needs. And it's also indicative of the kinds of things in the air in your family system when you were born. It has that in common with the south node of the moon, which is how I teach the south node, as indicative of the kinds of conditioning environments your soul has you born into in many lifetimes to learn how to be a human. So when the planet's in the fourth house, it's kind of on that level as well. So there's some strong Ceres energy in the family. Pick the theme. Protection that goes, you know, nurturing that goes into smothering. I haven't used that word yet, but Persephone's kind of smothered. Ceres is kind of a smothering mother. Or feeding or nurturing, all those kinds of things. Mentoring. not being able to let go, let someone grow up. Pick the theme, but there's something strong in the family system itself. Themes of protection, sheltering, smothering may run strong in that family, but also throughout generations, because something in the fourth house says we are all learning about this as an emotional or energetic inheritance. Now, the need to let others grow into self-sufficiency is major with this, because as the identity of one who's loved because of nurturing, protecting behaviors is deep, meaning if the series in the fourth makes that thing about when I care for you, I feel better about myself loud. I feel nurturing energy when I love you. And so that identity may run super deep because, again, it's passed down unintentionally throughout many generations. Okay. And this person may crave a family of one's own. It could be true for any series placement, but this may be louder here, which may be part of a deep healing effort to heal the identity imbalance. In other words, I may not know who I am unless I'm caring for others. Well, how do I do that? Kids, family, dogs, cats, whatever. When I say family, it doesn't have to be your biological children or even other people's biological human children. It can be animals of any kind. And it can be one, it can be many. But when I say family, I broaden that out. I love nurturing. That kind of idea is a very strong series theme. I need to be that person, right? Okay. Now, series in the fifth house. Nurturing, healing, and protection may come out in a big way. The fifth house is the house of learning how to develop and express ego, right? And egoic expression. Sometimes it's about making noise, and sometimes it's about literally creating things and performing things that we think of as creativity. But having an opinion and a personal contribution are the grounds of the fifth house. So they may come out in a big way. This person's ideas and perspectives about what's right for others may be loud to the point that others are turned off, feeling smothered. Think about somebody whose ego is wrapped up with telling you what you should eat or telling you, what you should wear or how late you can come home. Think about that. So this can be wrapped up with the kind of ego expression. Planets in the fifth house can be kind of loud because they need to show who they are and express themselves out loud, right? If it's retrograde, of course, that's a different story a little bit. But in general, I think this holds true. Now, this person needs to allow others room to move and breathe, and to learn to detach from how nurturing is received by others, doing it when appropriate because it's appropriate. So this is all these placements call for boundaries, but this one's a little louder because if your egoic identity is wrapped up in other people receiving what they sometimes don't want from you, you might struggle, you might compensate, trying to essentially smothering or being controlling without wanting to hurt them. But anyway, you need to allow others room to move and breathe, and realize that just because you want to give something, if somebody else doesn't want it, let it go. Why are you giving? We get into this in Cerialia. Is there a cost to love, and what's the motivation to giving? So we're going to get into this in the channel material and the questions for reflection in Cerialia. I've already channeled most of the channel material for the course, and it's anyway. So okay, good. So the fifth house, that's that. The sixth house, I wrote this as a quintessential helper healing placement because series themes, as we're talking about in the sixth house, noticing details, caring about process, focusing on minute details, and wanting to improve things and be of service and actually have that concrete hands-on help and healing effect. The person may either work to perfect healing and service-oriented strategies, or avoid doing so because of not wanting to take responsibility for others. So I say it's kind of a quintessential placement for this. But when it comes down to it, the person may choose not to do it because sixth house planets are learning about responsibility in very important ways. And it's not managerial responsibility. That's the 10th house, by the way. Sixth house responsibility is, I own this project, I'm responsible for it, and I'm going to be judged according to how well I do and how well it turns out. That kind of like, I own this thing, I'm dragging this around with me forever. So it's that day-to-day slog of responsibility in the sixth house. So the person will want to help, but may understand the cost of responsibility might be a little too high. Okay. So this is a go-to person when something goes wrong or someone's under the weather, whether the chart holder likes it or not. Because in that person's psyche, maybe giving off the broadcasting, I know a lot of stuff about helping and healing. And people may come to that person, as an expert, and that person might still not want responsibility. So more boundaries are needed, of course, here. And a strong need here is to learn to see all humans as works in progress, learning to grow up on their own. Because one of the things that can happen in the sixth house is not knowing when to stop, because everything's not perfect yet. I told you these 45 things, and I know you got worn out the other day when I told you those and expected you to write them down about what you should be eating or whatever. But now I have another 25, so I need you to get your pen out again. And the other person's like, who the hell do you think you are? So it's important with sixth house planets to be willing to be a resource, because you're driven to learn and analyze and perfect things. Be a resource, be available, but chill out and don't force it on anybody, especially with Ceres in the sixth. Okay. Well, one of the things here is people ask for help when they need it. So to be available to give help is important, but to force it on people is very not cool, which you will learn if you try to do it. People will hate you. People will not want to call you again. They won't answer the phone anymore. They'll ignore your texts. They'll block your emails. If you're pushy and if you're not letting them go through their own process of becoming the source of love for themselves. So learn all you learn, perfect your skills, but give other people space. Now, Ceres in the seventh house sees Ceres in other people. Every planet in the seventh house, or any planet, the person may not know how to own that energy. So nurturing, healing, helping qualities in self may not be owned. And there's no defect in the person. It's because you're wired to need this energy activated by others. I steal this almost right out of Steve Forrest's mouth. I just had never thought about it. And then I was listening to him at a workshop, and I thought about that thing about, it's nothing wrong with the person. It's that the person is naturally wired to need others to activate this part of themselves. So people with seventh house planets often attract the best and the worst. Other people living out the best and the worst sides of the archetype, because the chart holder needs to learn discernment and how to own the best qualities of it, so she's willing to be that energy. So like Ceres in the seventh, the person might find a bunch of needy people or smothering people who love so much they can't let you live your life. And so anyway, the person needs to activate, oh, I need boundaries here. And that would be, I'm willing to receive that, thanks for your efforts, but I need to figure this out. But this person may be surrounded by others who do own the nurturing, healing, helping qualities in self. Sometimes people with a planet in the seventh just watch the world happen around them, and it's full of that energy. They are so aware of whatever planetary archetype they have in their seventh house natally of other people in the world. And sometimes they may feel like passive observers, but then people they're connected to personally, of course, the seventh house is the house of relationships, may bring it out in them or bring this energy to them loudly, and then they have to engage. That's the function of other people, other souls as people being helpers for us to learn about ourselves, right? So these qualities of Ceres, what I talked about earlier in Myth and Archetype, this thing about overdoing it, right? The chart holder might draw, again, people who are kind of smothering, and that chart holder has to say, wait a minute, give me some space. You're not my mom or my dad, and learn how to negotiate, which is the seventh house process. Learn how to compromise while learning self-respect, how to show up as an equal and learn to navigate things together, build bridges and harmony, and learn to get on the same page with each other. That's really the seventh house process. So the need here in this person is to own the Ceres qualities, which may first come out as helping others even too much, but the need is to own the motivation and methods related to self-care. When you find Ceres in the seventh house, that person may have the loudest blind spot about one's own needs and boundaries, because it seems like other people need things, or there's the opportunity, I can be there for them. Ceres in the eighth house, it's nurturing, etc., helping, healing through intimacy. of all kinds, right? Deep and serious trust is needed to access Ceres in this person. Any planet in the 8th house, and I recently did a video on YouTube called The Deeper Meaning of the 8th House, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to check that out. But this thing about the 8th house is the most private part of the chart. I mean, it's a secret part of the chart. We can think of the water houses 4, 8, and 12 as private, right? But the 8th house in particular, because we need others to take us into our own basements to open us up. So we actually need to be affected deeply by others. And that only happens if we trust, if we open, if we become vulnerable, deeply vulnerable. So the nurturing need from this person with the Ceres in the 8th is, I need to trust you. I need to know that you're solid and I can count on you. But then, of course, that person may also get drawn into imbalanced relationship, nurturing issues in relationship by others too. So that whole thing about I need nurturing, but I'm trying to give it as well, it only gets unlocked through intimacy. When I say that, I don't mean only sexual intimacy. I mean any situation where you have to trust somebody and you become vulnerable and open. Now, once that opening happens, loyalty can be serious with Ceres here. And the letting go process of Ceres journeys may be avoided until a crisis forces it. What I mean is, like, I identify as a nurturer for you, and now our 15-year marriage is over. Shit, what do I do? Like a crisis, a series, a line drawn in the sand or a brick wall may need to happen for somebody with Ceres in the 8th, because the depth of that rootedness of that connection, the person may not know how to let go. All Scorpionic, Plutonian, 8th house things, and I said I don't equate them, but this is one thing all those, the faces of the archetype have in common, is that we need to be present, fully present and honest and open when we're with somebody, and then we need to let go when we're not. We need to learn how to let go. And Ceres here, because it's wrapped up with the models of love from being an infant and where love comes from and who makes you feel safe, it's just a deep, can be very messy. All things in the 8th house can be healed. Check out that other video. All right, now intimacy includes bonding of all kinds and sexuality and deep emotional exploration and attachment. I just want to be clear that the 8th house happens in friendships and family relationships, even without sexuality, but trust is a big thing, and vulnerability. Ceres in the 9th house, the person may gather perspectives and tools regarding nurturing, etc., from far and wide, like really open, reaching out into the world and other traditions. The person may have a strong imagination when it comes to seeing a better version of others, like you could be healthier, happier, safer in the process of growing up and leaving the nest. Like, I believe in you, right? And this person may develop philosophies regarding the roles of Ceres and Persephone, parent-child. Now, I wrote that, and I thought about it later, and I thought, is that how I want to say it? But I want to be clear about Ceres in the 9th will be based on belief. It will run according to belief without realizing it. That's why I say philosophy. We could substitute worldview or framework for understanding life for philosophies or philosophy. But the person may have clear ideas without rationally evaluating them, is what I mean. Because a planet in the 9th house can run on assumptions. And that person might be preachy about what others need. It goes wrong when somebody's narrow-minded or wearing blinders or assuming that one's own idea is the only idea. Ceres in the 10th house, a noticeable public figure regarding something about parenting or nurturing, helping, healing, whatever, mentoring, being a symbol of Ceres for others, whether he or she likes it or not. Now, the work that appeals to this person will follow Ceres' trajectory in some way. It could be through caring for a group or focusing on mentoring that's temporary or long-term, building in the reality that little birds need to leave the nest. And think about how, if you're a symbol for Ceres for people and they encourage you to be giving, and then you're like, I love giving, you might identify as a job, a teacher, a social worker, a manager, any kind of healthcare practitioner, any kind of counselor or healer, massage therapist, a herbalist, any kind of healing work, right? Or any work done with heart or with caring for people as a motivating factor. Then that person retires after 40 years. Well, now what? it can be a difficult thing when others see you as Ceres and your role as Ceres ends. So that's something important to recognize. This person may over-identify through that work as a helper and cling to and defend that identity doggedly. Think about it's in the house related to Capricorn Saturn. That energy of, you know, cardinal Earth, like I'm ambitious and I'm going to do this and this is what I want to do, and that strong energy backing it up. In the 11th, this person may be the mother or parent figure in a group or nurturer, etc. This person may rise to leadership in a group setting of some kind and be depended upon for counsel, helping, healing, protection. And the person may derive identity from how the group does or doesn't respond when he or she offers help. If you're trying to be Ceres in a group and they don't want you to be Ceres, that can be very painful. So you might learn the boundaries of offering it, you know, being available, but if others don't want it, that's okay, right? And the person needs to focus on her or his own goals regarding self-care, not letting the group distract him or her, because there's always something in it that needs helping, healing, protecting, fixing, guiding, something. There's all, you know, we think about group identity or group dynamics or what's going on in society, another 11th house angle. There's always something, right? There's always something going on. And the person needs to not get too distracted on that greater world around him or her and forgetting the self. To not forget the self is very important. My thing about the 11th house is that we can't create the future we want to live in by ourselves. And we ally with others who want similar things. And sometimes we're in groups with others who don't want similar things because we are in the process of needing to learn, oh, this might not be the right group for me. So how do I know what group to be part of? You go back to what your values are. I say go back to the second house and start with what matters to you most. 11th house, then find people who happen to share similar values. But the 11th house is your value system projected into the future. What world do I want to live in? Not just how am I using my time, energy, money right now, but what world do I want to live in? Okay. Now, Ceres in the 12th house may derive nurturing from quiet reflection and may need a lot of time alone to center. If you have Ceres in the 12th and you know that you do, this whole presentation has been about all these things, right? The Ceres houses 1 through 11. But in the 12th house, it's a very different part of the chart. The person may feel the wounds of the collective and want to take a collective cause under his or her wing. And that may lead to overwhelm with the perceived needs of the rest of creation, right? And not take care of the self. I've talked about this a lot with, Chiron and Pisces opposing Pluto and Virgo. For those people born in the 1960s, where Pluto and Virgo people need to show up and want to be specific. And I went to bed early so I could get up early and show up 5 minutes early. And I did my homework and I'm all prepared. I organized it in a binder with color-coded marker. I'm ready. Opposing, blocked by Chiron and Pisces, the miasmic, foggy, fuzzy wounds of people who just can't pay attention enough to learn to help themselves. It can lead to overwhelm. Do I overwork here? Anyway, it's kind of an akin kind of energy. But the person will be in tune, this chart holder with Ceres in the 12th, will be in tune with the problem in the world. The person may also feel there's no point in helping, healing, protecting, nurturing, all of them, because others' needs are so massive and unending. This is the dilemma of the 12th house that for a number of years I struggled with my own Pluto Venus in the 12th. And what I came up with is you're going to be aware, well, if you're paying attention to the part of you that lives in the 12th house, you're going to be aware of what hurts or what's wrong or what may need addressing in the collective. You're going to see everywhere certain themes and threads over and over again. You're going to hear certain notes and chords hit over and over and over again. And it's true that you can't solve all the whole problem, but you could contribute something that's meaningful to you in a helping, healing motivation. So like for me, one of the things that could eat away at me is sexual violence all over the world. And we're always hearing about these instances and whatever, all over the world, literally, because it's a global issue that we're all struggling through, needing to heal certain things and come into certain kinds of balance. Well, my Lilith work is putting something into the collective, dropping something into the collective stream we're all part of that may help people regarding that energy. So I don't take responsibility for the enormity of everything, but I contribute something that from my heart that may help. It does. It does help some people. And that helps the collective in a very, very small way. But same thing with Ceres in the 12th. You can't fix it all, but you can figure out how to give in a very impactful way by putting something nurturing into the stream that we're all part of. Anyway, so there's just a, if you want to know more about this, I have audio on SoundCloud. Look up on soundcloud.com, Tom Jacobs' 12th House. You'll see a bunch of different things from the radio show I did a few years ago, called The Soul's Journey, and also more recent MP3s on the 12th House. All right, now Ceres in a sign, and again, here's my red thing. Houses and signs are not the same. I just want to be really clear about that again. We see it in books all the time. We see it, in teachings all the time, books and websites. If you have Chiron and Aries or the first house, I just think it gets you into potential of muddy, fuzzy thinking, where then you get a chart you can't interpret because you're not understanding that houses are one thing, signs are another thing. So houses are where or what parts of life the planet is active in. Ceres in the first, it's about my personality and my body and me, right? The sign it's in is how and why that's functioning. I'm going to do some examples in a minute, but the sign idea is it's the how and why. What's the motivation here and how does it do it? And what motivates it? What methods does it use? Some people ask me periodically, I'm assuming people ask all astrologers this periodically, but they'll say, which is more important, a house or a sign? Because whatever, they want to know about their Lilith or Chiron or Sun or Ceres or whatever. And the answer is both are critically important to understand and evaluate and analyze. Because the Ceres in this case is a part of the psyche. It's a part of the person that needs a certain kind of unfolding and needs to, experience certain things and answer certain questions for the self through experience and choices. The house is where it's playing out in life. Like what kinds of life arenas, right, are activated here. And then the sign is how and why it's happening. So they're not the same, and neither is more important than the other. Okay, let's move into the signs. Aries. Well, first of all, let me say that you'll see fewer explanatory keywords here. Doesn't mean I consider the signs less important, but I want you to understand how they're different. So keywords include bold, instinctive, unapologetic, unpremeditated, foot in mouth, like just doing something without thinking, impulsive, fresh, warrior-like, defensive. So think about, and I'll do some examples, but think about a Ceres in a house. In the second house, this is about my resources and my self-esteem. Oh, if it's in Aries, I'm bold about that. I'm instinctive, I'm impulsive, right? It's the second house done in an Aries way. I just feel really strongly I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to think about that. So when people say, do you have Chiron in the 12th house or Pisces? It's not the same. Obviously, that's my soapbox of the day. Taurus, stable or stabilizing, right? Simplifying, slowing down, focused on basics, intentional and sensual. We use that word a lot regarding like intimacy and pleasure, but sensual is really just body-centered awareness. My senses, relying on my senses, my physical senses. So Ceres in Taurus slows down and tries to do one thing at a time. Not to be too like stereotypical. If you have Ceres in Aries, you might eat something and not realize your body doesn't like it. Ceres in Taurus, you'll like touch it and you'll be like, this isn't right for me. You'll somehow know, or you'll be starting to chew it and you'll be like, no, that's wrong. Because it's trying to limit too much input. All things in Taurus are trying to limit input. So slowing down, focused on basics regarding healing and nurturing others, it's going to be very methodical. Ceres and Taurus person will do it slowly and one thing at a time and will stay focused. There's an intentionality and focus that comes with anything in Taurus. Gemini, open, flexible, curious, verbal, educational, experimental, lighthearted, wondering what might happen next. If I say this, what does that make you think, right? So Ceres and Gemini might be very flexible and open and curious, trying to figure out what might be true, right? Trying to like gather data to research and learning are very important for any planet in Gemini. Moving on, Cancer, soft, caring, unassuming. It is cardinal, but it's, you know, ruled by the moon. Receptive, feeling, taking things personally, heart opening. So that Ceres might not lead, but might be very protective, you know, when something is wrong, like trying to take care of somebody or step in that cardinal way. When someone needs help, that person might find that Ceres very receptive, right? It might operate through the lens of feeling. Like somebody says, oh, to the Ceres and Cancer person, are you hungry? And that person will feel the answer. Okay. Leo, loud, expressive, maybe opinionated, but having opinions. I read through that this morning and I was like, oh, I'll have a caveat in there. Based in opinion. I don't want to use opinionated as a negative word. Creative, personalized, needs recognition, maybe warm and joyful. So the end desire for like Ceres and Cancer is I want you to feel safe, right? The end desire of Ceres and Leo would be I want you to feel good. I might do all those Ceres-like things, but I want you to feel warm and joyful. I want the effect, right? I'm motivated to create joy here. Virgo, analytical, critical, service and improvement oriented or focused, nervous or anxious, self-conscious, over responsible or under responsible. So Ceres through Virgo might be super, you know, detail oriented and super fastidious about every little detail, and might nurture through being analytical. You know, in Cancer, giving you a bowl of soup, right? And Leo encouraging you to take care of yourself or something. But in Virgo, it might be like really focused on, you know, numbers or something even. It's just that style of Virgo is to be very specific, to be critical. And let's talk about for a moment, critical has two kind of major connotations. Like if you receive a critique, someone's, you know, analyzing what you're doing and trying to be objective and giving you some, you know, bird's eye view thing and giving you feedback if you're doing it well or not. But the idea of being critical, well, don't be too critical. Well, any planet in Virgo or any dwarf planet even needs to be critical, to pay attention, to be discerning and logical. Okay. So I don't see critical as a bad word anymore. Before doing astrology and thinking about Virgo a lot, I think I did. Okay, Libra, you know, Ceres motivated by kindness, trying to find balance, being an excellent listener, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, deferring to others, being gentle, trying to smooth things over or smooth things out, obviously diplomacy, harmony, that kind of motivation. And so the methods could be, you know, I think one of the examples I included later is including in Libra, and you know, negotiation. I'm motivated to help you and I'm willing to negotiate on how it gets done. Scorpio, intense, direct, powerful, secretive and or honest, transforming, even sexual. So this intense transformative thing with Ceres and Scorpio, I nurture in a direct, powerful way, or I nurture in a transforming way. I nurture in a sexual way even. So that's possible with this, but it's going to be very intense. And think, you know, just for a moment, I haven't threaded this through all the sign or house placements, but that idea of like wanting to give nurturing, but also perhaps expecting others to nurture you. Think about with Ceres and Libra, somebody might expect others to nurture through kindness, but they might keep finding other people who are like overtly critical who mean well. Ceres and Virgo. Right? Ceres and Scorpio, you need to be told the truth by others, but you might find other people kind of like dancing around it. You know, you might find Libra people who are trying to like be nice, and you're just like, you know, you may not feel nurtured if you're not getting that intense direct experience. Okay. Moving on to Sagittarius, big, expansive, loud, fiery, right? Having faith in a better tomorrow, or having faith that tomorrow's as bad as today. And intuitive is the last keyword here. You know, expansive, maybe doesn't check the facts first, but is run by belief. So this is, you know, you know, it's not the same as Ceres in the ninth house, but it is oriented, you know, toward having a belief system and operating in that fiery, big, expansive way, perhaps without analyzing details. And anything in Sagittarius may have an unshakable faith that tomorrow can be better, or an unshakable faith that tomorrow's as bad as today or yesterday. So just kind of be aware of that. And Ceres in Sagittarius might be very intuitive, and you know, just kind of like you know, recently I've been exposed to people doing kinesiology. As my girlfriend studies this new to us healing modality she just came across a couple months ago, and some people she uses a pendulum. Some people will use kinesiology, like they'll test, you know, their own body as they read you, as they do. Anyway, so I've just observed people doing these kinds of things, and it's like, you know, tuning into that Jupiterian right brain, you know, this is true, this is not true, sensing that what is most true. Ceres and Sagittarius might be very intuitive that way. All right, now Capricorn, practical, grounded, concrete, measured, high expectations, but also clear expectations, and in it for the long haul. Everything in Capricorn has a long view. So Ceres and Capricorn here may be more practical, right? And maybe you're a Ceres person who has Ceres somewhere else, and you need to be heard. Maybe yours is in Leo in the seventh, and you just really need to have your feeling heard. And maybe you counter somebody else with Ceres and Capricorn who says, okay, what can I do about it? And you're like, no, I just want you to listen to me. And the person's like, but I'm activated now, I must protect you. You know, and because there's that need to be practical and clear, to have decisive, well, clear decisions, to be decisive, that will have concrete effects. So, okay. Aquarius, original, different, intellectual, detached, cold seeming, but that's objective, unique, maybe disconnected. Somebody with Ceres in Aquarius might be up in the head, and when it comes to nurturing, the person might just see logical things, you know, and may presume that even an individual perspective that can come with a planet in Aquarius, if somebody else says, please hold me, that person might say, oh, I think you're self-sufficient. And it's not because they're being jerks or they're trying to be cold. It's because they see it from a very different standpoint. They may have a unique way of dealing with their own needs. Now, again, they might also be dissociated from their own needs, but there's that objective, it's working through this lens of objectivity and, you know, detachment. Pisces, the method of Pisces is to surround or surrender, merge, be compassionate to the extreme, open, right? And it's mood altering and state and consciousness altering is what I mean by state. And also giving up. I say surrender, giving in, you know, merging, but also giving up. So something in Pisces can be overwhelmed. Any planet in Pisces can be overwhelmed by the enormity of the environment, the energetic cues in the environment. So the impulse is to merge with somebody who needs help, right? But then might be overwhelmed by that person's, you know, energy field or consciousness or what's actually happening. So the urge is to merge, right? But it also sometimes the boundaries thing are really important with the water signs. Let's just do a couple examples. I think I have 5 examples here, and then we'll wrap it up. And again, I'm going to spell it out how to think through it so you don't confuse signs and houses. A Ceres in the second house in Aries. So Ceres in the second, the way the person nurtures will, oh, I actually used that as the example earlier, will be through, you know, it's an earth house, practical means, through using time, energy, money, and attention. The person may develop a bunch of skills, right? The person will do that in an Aries way, bold, unthinking, courageous. So Ceres here needs to develop courage, Aries, by using the second house resources, time, energy, money, possessions, skills. Okay, fourth house in Libra. Ceres in the fourth house says, you know, primacy, primary, that's the word. Primary in my family history are Ceres issues, fourth house. And I need to make sure I have boundaries with my family, and I need to understand my own emotions, all the fourth house things. In Libra, I'm motivated to bring peace. And like I said earlier, I might negotiate. I might say, hey, aging parents, I'd like to do this for you to make your life easier. And the parents say, we don't want that. And then the fourth house Libra person would negotiate. Okay, you don't want that. Well, what if we took 60% of that and then we added this other little thing that wouldn't be an inconvenience in this dialogue? How can I help you? Let me listen to your needs. Let me work with you, right? Ceres in the fourth house in Libra. But also that can sometimes have the Achilles heel of, you know, you might not take care of yourself because everybody else is trying to be nice as well. So you might need to stand up for yourself in a way that puts yourself first and not based in the opinions or needs of others. So anyway, fourth house Libra, I'm going to negotiate, but I also need to make sure I don't listen too much to the needs of others and ignore myself. Ceres in the seventh house in Virgo. Seventh house is about relationships and what I expect from others and what I seem to find in them, right, that I need to learn of myself. So I may find a bunch of Ceres people if I have this placement. I may not remember that I can be a nurturing figure, but when I find other people who are that way, I realize, yeah, I understand that that's a Ceres in the seventh house thing. Oh yeah, I would like to help you too. And relationships can even be based on Ceres dynamics, whether healthy or with crummy boundaries. Virgo. Those other people are going to be very specific in how they nurture. Analytical, intellectual, remember all that stuff? Very detail oriented, maybe very picky, maybe critical in a difficult way, right? Maybe give you criticism, right? About you should replace your toothbrush more often. And you're like, whose business is that? Like, who, like some detail. I don't know why I said that, but just a detail out of nowhere where somebody else observes you and is like, oh, you should do this. That's a Virgo seventh house thing. And that can feel good, like I feel really paid attention to, or it can feel like, hold up, we just met. Like, what's going on? Okay, moving on to the next one. Ceres in the 11th house in Scorpio. 11th house is about the group thing. So the person may want to be a nurturer for a group or be a parent figure for people within a group, whether as a leader or just as a support figure. But that through the lens of Scorpio, that person will be intense about it, maybe very intense, and maybe may be perceived as harsh because he or she is telling the truth, or, that is not comfortable to look at. So it's Ceres in the 11th house of groups, and it's done in a scorpionic way. And for scorpionic motivation, I know this group can be better than it is. I know that we can get beyond this difficult thing. So there's that, the lens of Scorpio. And the last one here, Ceres in the 8th house in Cancer. That whole thing about trust and vulnerability and depth, and Ceres in the 8th won't get unlocked or activated unless a person opens and trusts and is willing to be vulnerable, or is somehow pried open. We think about betrayal. We think about certain power over power under things, including violence and sexual violence, and where people manipulate us or power over us or something regarding intimacy. All that stuff does belong in the 8th house. But that's where we can actually be opened against our will. Think of it that way. That's a large topic, but that is something that can happen where somebody gets opened against his or her will, but then that's the 8th house opening, right? Then healing needs happening, so then I need to be vulnerable to receive healing. Long story, anyway. So then that's happening through the lens of Cancer, seeking nurturing energy, seeking safety, seeking a deeply emotional connection. Maybe this could be one of those places where somebody attracts somebody just like his or her parents and learns about his or her own parents through how he or she relates to the lover or the friend. There's that need to get into the emotional dynamics of it, and that comes through that depth connection. So 8th house done in a Cancerian way. Okay, so that takes us to the end. I'll just remind you, this video is the introduction to Cerialia, which is the Festival of Ceres, April 20th through 26th, 2019. When you go to my site, you'll see this banner rather prominently displayed on the homepage. Be in touch over email with questions, but there's a ton of info on this page. It explains the process, the themes of the 7 days, what the 4 channel meditation themes are, and how it actually works. So thanks to Linda and EA Zoom Meetings for the opportunity to do this. And again, I'm Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and healingsuicide.com. Take care.